Hello everyone, welcome to THT, and we are meeting once again for a new deck video. First of all, I would like to wish an happy Easter to everybody who will celebrate it. And without further ado, let's jump into this sweet deck list where today we're trying to make the Grand Inquisitor as good as he can be. So we've seen a lot of Grand Inquisitor Blue and a few of them making some good performance in tournaments. Which may lead you to believe that Grand Inquisitor Blue is the best way to run Grand Inquisitor. At least it's the most natural, since there is a lot of synergies between the blue cards and Grand Inquisitor. Like, for example, the Stackback Pursuer, which is particularly strong with Grand Inquisitor, and there's simply just a lot of very good synergy. The ability to boost the health of your units can be also quite handy. With all that being said, I would like to show you a different approach today. It's a deck that has been worked on and developed by a friend of mine who's called Kotul, and he's a Polish player, so you probably know him if you're part of the Polish community. And he's been working on this deck for a pretty long time, and he both started, of course, like everybody else, running Grand Inquisitor in blue, and he then moved away from blue to try the green approach, and he's been a lot more successful without green deck. And I can also attest by myself, by playing against and with this deck, that the green version has also impressed me far more than the blue version. So in my opinion, it is the strongest way to run Grand Inquisitor, and because in this channel we're trying to show you different decks, we're trying to show you how we can think outside the box, but always in the idea of trying to build the most competitive deck possible. The idea is always to push to the maximum of that competitiveness every leader that exists in Spark of Rebellion. And in my opinion, Grand Inquisitor happens to be the most competitive version of Grand Inquisitor that I've came across, that I've played with and against. And this is what I would like to show you today. So as you can see here, the deck is very similar to Darth Vader Green. So a ramp deck that plays very powerful late game cards, that has this ability to overpower the opponent with very powerful guard that is going to be ramping into. But there's also a lot of small differences. For example, one of the key aspects of Grand Inquisitor is that he is the Force leader that comes out earlier than Vader, and also he has a lot more synergies with the Force unit. So is very powerful synergies with Fifth Brother, very powerful synergies with Seventh Sister, which means that we are capable to run a deck that plays a lot of Force unit. Therefore, we can use the full synergy, and the most powerful full synergy in the game right now is obviously Fourth Throw, that you can see here on the top of the screen. This card, Fourth Throw, is by far the strongest payoff for building and playing a fourth deck. And this deck, as opposed to my Vader deck, which is very much just a ram deck, some people have been playing fourth version of Vader. But in my opinion, if you're going to be running a full version of Vader, you're probably better off going with Grand Inquisitor, because Grand Inquisitor has just so many more synergies with Seventh Sister and Fifth Brother, which those cards, in my opinion, are fairly weak in a regular Vader deck, but in a Grand Inquisitor they became some of the best card in the deck, which is obviously very attractive. So we are basically the most powerful synergies that you can see in a blue Grand Inquisitor deck, which mean that the synergies with Fifth Brother, the synergies with Seventh Sister, the Fourth Throw, all that stuff, you can play those synergies in a Grand Inquisitor Green. So we're taking the best out of the Grand Inquisitor Blue, and we're taking the best out of the Green Black Shell, which is obviously the Vaders, the Super Laser Technician, the Resupply, the Ramp, the Traitorous, the Overwhelming Barrage, all those cards which are incredibly powerful. So we're trying to get the best out of both worlds. We're trying to bet the best of Vader and the best of Grand Inquisitor Blue, and try to combine them in one very powerful deck. So, and this is what we do with GI. So if we had to compare this deck to Vader, how does it compare? So overall, the deck is a little bit less good in late game, because obviously Grand Inquisitor as a leader is not as powerful as Vader. as a leader. And there's a couple of things. We don't have that many removals, so we are less control. This deck is a lot less control than the Vader Green, which is very much like a ramp control deck, while the Grand Inquisitor is far more mid-rangey in a sense that it's a deck that can really take the role of the aggressor depending on the matchup and can become very aggressive, which naturally makes Grand Inquisitor also better against aggro because it has this ability to say, okay, well, I can switch in aggro mode and I can kill you very quickly using the synergies of Grand Inquisitor with Fifth Brother. Can do some pretty insane turns. And Grand Inquisitor is the kind of leader that, if left alone, if the opponent does not do what you're doing, if it's trying to ignore you, he's going to suffer the consequence because this leader, when left alone, can deal just a tremendous amount of damage to your base in very quick succession. And that's the thing that you have to watch out when you're playing against Grand Inquisitor that can really take you by surprise. And this version of Grand Inquisitor is still very much capable of doing that, but it also has the super late game kind of green ramp deck that will allow him to overpower most of the other mid-range deck, whether it's a Boba or Luke deck, for example. So basically, if I had to summarize, a bit less control A, bit less on the top end, a bit less removals, but the ability to be super aggressive with Grand Inquisitor. So without further ado, let's kind of take a look at the at the deck itself. Yeah. Take a look at the Grand Inquisitor, the leader himself. So as you can see, Grand Inquisitor is a leader that is kind of weird to evaluate because he has, in my opinion, one of the most powerful leader ability in the entire game. But on the flip side, he has one of the weakest leader unit in the entire game. So it is kind of a weird leader where very much is all about his ability. And his ability is very powerful. The ability to ready a unit that has 3 or less power, has tons of synergies in the deck that we'll explore as we go on the card by card analysis. And the ability to kind of like put a unit in play, ready that unit, attack with that unit right away. Kind of the equivalent of being able to put any of your units ready is just extremely impactful. And one of the leader deploy, you can even ready the unit twice in the same turn, once again, if your opponent lets you do what you do. And a big advice that I can give you with Grand Inquisitor is that often, instead of just deploying your Grand Inquisitor by default on turn 5, or earlier if you manage to get ramp, don't necessarily, this is not necessarily the thing that you want to do if you know that the Grand Inquisitor is going to get killed right away. The main asset of the Grand Inquisitor is his ability to kind of double untap a unit, to be able to untap a unit twice on the same turn using his leader ability combined with his the ability of the unit once it's deployed, and this way can kind of deal a tremendous amount of damage to the opponent. So sometimes you're going to deploy Grand Inquisitor for doing that. Sometimes you're going to deploy just because you need a force unit to use fourth throw. So he's still very useful as a leader unit. He's just not as impactful as something like a Vader, but he makes up for this by being able to deploy earlier and also by having his very powerful leader ability, which is just very, very powerful. And we'll see this in more detail as we explore the deck. So now jumping on into the card by card analysis, we'll start with the Seasoned Shore Trooper, just a very decent card in any ramp deck, just the ability to become a 4/3, just a great card to use Barrage on. It's a cheap unit that can use Barrage, a great card to pick up from Vader, talking about the Vader unit. And it's also a card that happens to have 3 toughness, so we can actually untap it to be able to attack with it right away with Grand Inquisitor, which is something that we sometimes do. We can't do this once he gets his plus 2 attack bonus, but before that we can do that sometimes. Next we got the Viper Probe Droid, a classic, mostly here to deal with aggro, to deal with the 3/3s that comes out, the Sabine, the Battlefield Marine, and also take a pick at the opponent hand. This is very much for the early stage of the game. We also play Wolf in the main deck as another 3/2 for 2 that allows us to trade with the opponent 3 drops. Also very good against a Crafty Smuggler. If we happen to have the initiative, we can attack into Smuggler, kill it with his shield, thanks to the Saboteur ability. Sometimes allows to ignore enemy Sentinels. So just a very solid unit. The healing thing is also quite good. It's just we happens to be playing a deck that doesn't care about villainy units. I mean, not very much, and doesn't care too much about the unit being Imperial, so we can very comfortably play this card without much of a downside. So just a very solid 2-drop. So those are going to be our turn 1 play in this deck, so that's going to be 9 units in total. Then we play 2 copies of Cell Block Guard, which is obviously here mostly for the aggro matchup, but also as a great card to find from a Vader. Just very useful to always have a couple of Sentinel units in your deck, because there's always going to be a situation where it's going to become very useful. And then we have one of the best cards in the deck. There's obviously Fifth Brother, which is, in my opinion, not a very powerful card in general. It's just way too easy to kill. It comes into play, doesn't have an immediate impact on the game, very vulnerable before it gets to untap, and if opponent can one-shot it, which is very easy to do because he only has 4 toughness, he doesn't really do much of anything. However, in the Grand Inquisitor deck, he's amazing because suddenly we have the ability to untap him with Grand Inquisitor, then he gets into up to 4 attacks, can trade with something, or deal a bunch of damage to the base, also ping another unit. Just extremely impactful when he has this immediate impact on the game that Grand Inquisitor gives him. It's also, of course, a cheap Force Enabler for 4th throw, and also a card that is probably the best card we want to pick up from our Vader. This is one of the great qualities of playing Grand Inquisitor Green, is that you got access to Vader plus Fifth Brother, and obviously you have the ability to make this Fifth Brother have an immediate impact after you play your Vader, which is just extremely good. Then we got Super Laser Technician, of course, the good old ramp card, the best ramp card in the game. Interesting fact about Super Laser Technician in a Grand Inquisitor deck is the fact that we can basically kill him right away using Grand Inquisitor, and Grand Inquisitor is the only leader in the game that can kill Super Laser Technician for free. So Vader can kill his own Technician using his ping, Palpatine can do the same using his ability, but we are the only deck in the game that can kill the Super Laser Technician for free, and that's very good. That's very handy. So we don't depend as much on the Super Laser into Energy Conversion Lab. By the way, I completely forgot to mention, but we are playing obviously Energy Conversion Lab as our base, which is obviously a surprise to absolutely no one. Next we got Resupply. So there is a situation where I prefer Resupply over Super Laser Technician, but specifically in this deck, Super Laser Technician is just strictly better than Resupply because of our ability to kill the Super Laser Technician for free. With that being said, having some redundancy on the ramp is still very useful. That's why we play 3 copies of Resupply. Next we got 1 copy of Consortium Star Viper. Obviously anti-aggro card combined with ECL, kills the enemy A-Wing, heal our base, just an amazing anti-aggro tech that we already know. One thing to note with Grand Inquisitor is that we don't need ECL to give Consortium Star Viper an immediate impact on the game. If we happen to have the initiative, we can just play Star Viper, use Grand Inquisitor, untap it, and attack with Star Viper right away, and heal our base right away. So we play 1 in the main deck, and then we add 2 additional Star Vipers into sideboard against aggro matchups. Moving on, we got Imperial Interceptor, which is going to be, of course, an anti-space unit. This card is just amazing against aggro. Put a unit on the board, kill something at the same time. Very impactful. Very hard to play red, black, and null play this card. It's just amazing. Combined with ECL, you can even kill a fire spray. What else can you ask for? Just amazing. Then there's a card which I've been criticizing a lot. I'm not personally a massive fan of Rook in general. I think that he's a very specialized, and his reliance on ECL is a big of a problem in my opinion. With that being said, Rook becomes a lot better in a Grand Inquisitor deck because obviously we can untap him using Grand Inquisitor ability, and then make Rook have an immediate impact on the game without relying on Energy Conversion Lab, which is a pretty big deal. So Rook is obviously going to be really great on the control matchup because he's very hard to kill, 6 HP and shielded, and also going to be able to kill all the big units that the opponent might have. He can one-shot the reinforcement walkers, he can one-shot the Palpatine, he can one-shot the Luke, and that is just very useful. So for that reason, just Rook is a great card. It's a one-off, and we added a second copy of it in certain matchups. Then we got a Seven Sister, a card that I'm not a very big fan of in general, but obviously in Grand Inquisitor she becomes a lot better because once again She's normally a 5-drop that doesn't have immediate impact on the game, but Grand Inquisitor gives her an immediate impact on the game. We can play her, untap her, attack with her right away, attack the base, kill an enemy unit at the same time, ignoring, of course, the sentinels. And it's a way to kind of gain some value over time, and she is also quite difficult to kill. And more importantly, she's also another force enabler, another fourth throw enabler that we can have, which is very cool. We can play her also with ECL, even though with ECL she's not that good because she's not really supposed to attack enemy units. She wants to attack the base to deal damage to the units. So most often we're going to be preferring to play her with Grand Inquisitor's ability rather than ECL. Ruthless Raider is kind of the auto inclusion on all black red decks. Just an incredible card, an incredible option to have to put pressure into the base in space. Immediate impact on the game, immediate impact when he dies. Just a great card overall. Not particularly synergistic with Grand Inquisitor, unfortunately, but it's just because of the 4 attack, but it's just too good to pass. And obviously the ability to one-shot a fire spray whenever it's combined with ECL is also a very powerful option to have. Generally speaking, if I'm playing against Boba, I'm trying to keep my ECL so that I can use ECL with Ruthless Raider or Time Interceptor to one-shot the enemy fire sprays. Because if we don't have that, killing fire spray becomes a lot more difficult. We have to either have a barrage or we have to wait up to 8 resources to get access to a Palpatine, which can be difficult. Obviously, Vader is going to be a part of his deck. It's an amazing card in his deck because it's another Force Enabler. It's one of the strongest. It is the strongest 7-drop in the game. Brings us, of course, the 5th brother, which is just amazing. Sometimes sub guard when we need to. An incredible card specifically in this deck. So I'm sorry for people who want to play a budget version of this deck. Unfortunately, Vader is very much needed to make this deck function properly. Of course, for the 8-drop, we got the Palpatine. In my opinion, the best 8-drop in the game. Particularly strong in this deck with all the ramp. And also another Force Enabler. So an amazing card. It's a 6/6 body attached with a barrage. What else can you ask for? Next, this brings us to 4th throw, and this is the first time I talk about this card in this channel. So 4th throw is, in my opinion, the best 4th enabler in the game. If you have a Force unit, this card is just incredibly impactful. There's 2 ways to use this card. I guess there's 3 ways, but the third one is a lot more niche. The first way is obviously you got a Force unit on the board, and you're going to be targeting the opponent with 4th throw, force him to discard a card, and kill a unit at the same time. Just incredibly impactful. It is something that the opponent can play around by having some small cheap card in his hand, but that's going to cost him a lot sometimes to do that. Generally speaking, I advise to use 4th throw when your opponent is low on card, when he has very few cards in hand. Because the fewer cards your opponent has in hand, the later stage of the game it is, the fewer cards your opponent has in hand, the more likely you're going to be discarding something very big, and that will deal tons of damage to something else. So 4th throw is just incredible at doing just that. But of course, 4th throw can do other things. That makes it just an incredible card, an incredible value card. The other thing that 4th throw can do is you can decide to discard one of your own card that you have in hand in order to deal tons of damage to something. So typically the best example would be your opponent has a Boba, and you can play 4th throw and you can throw your own Palpatine or your own Vader to deal 7 damage or 8 damage to the enemy leaders, to a Boba, and one-shot the Boba for only 1 resource. So yes, you spend 2 cards doing that, but it is such an impactful play. It is something that I very much advise people to do. It's very, very powerful. So that's the second way to use it. So discard your own things to have the guaranteed damage. But you still you need to have a Force unit in play though. Worth noticing, of course. The third way to use it is your opponent has only 1 card in hand. You know it's a very impactful card. Your opponent basically has 2 cards at the beginning of the turn. He resources 1 of them to be able to play the last card. His last card is very likely a very powerful card. You don't have any Force unit in hand, but you just 4th throw his last card. That's something that is very situational, but you can simply use it without a Force unit just to discard the last card. If you time it right, it can be very impactful. 4th throw is so a lot of people are gonna probably be very surprised that I'm not running Force Lightning, because if there's probably a deck that wants to play Force Lightning, it must be this deck, right? The thing is, we cannot play too many fourth payoff in this deck because fourth payoffs, they are very strong if you have force unit in play, but if you don't, then they are basically dead cards, or they're very close to dead. So playing any numbers of force lightning plus the fourth throw would probably put us in the situation where we have a force unit, it's great, we don't have force unit, it becomes really bad, and we have all those cards that don't do anything. So it's very a risky approach in my opinion. I much prefer to play the best force payoff. So then if I have force unit, I can use that. And also fourth throw is also a far easier to use than force lightning, because force lightning, even though it's a very good card, it requires a lot of resources to use. Like to have a decent force lightning, you have to pay at least 3 for it. While a fourth throw has the advantage of being as its maximum power even if you pay 1 for it. And that means that you can play a force unit and then play the fourth throw on the same turn. While doing this with the force lightning is a lot more difficult. So force lightning, very often you have to play the force unit, then wait an entire turn, hope that force unit survives, and then play the force lightning. So fourth throw is much more impactful most of the time, much easier to use, and we cannot place too many fourth payoff, because if we don't have any force unit, those payoffs are useless. So that's the reason we don't play force lightning. It's just too greedy of an approach. Next, of course, we got the force choke, which is just an excellent removal to deal with very powerful early unit. It's very strong against Sabine. It's very strong against Boba. With that being said, it is not amazing against control. That's why I'm only playing 2 copies of it. This could be wrong. You could justify running 3 of in this deck, but I've decided to go for a 2 approach and then 1 in the sideboard. Cool thing about this deck is that we have so many force units, we're getting the discount relatively often. Open Fire is here, of course, as a removal against Aggro, but it's good against, it's kind of solid against everything, but it's basically good against Aggro. Once again, we're running 2 copies with the 3rd copies in the sideboard that we bring in against Aggro. To the surprise of absolutely no one, we run 3 copies of Overwhelming Barrage, the best, still believe this card is the best card in the game, and a big reason to be playing green-black Grand Inquisitor, because you get access to Barrage. 2 copies of Traitorous. I did not manage to find more space to bring a 3rd one, unfortunately. Traitorous is incredible in general. I think you've heard enough about this card to know how powerful and impactful it is. I think this card is even better in Grand Inquisitor because you can literally, if you're afraid, for example, that your opponent might have an upgrade removal, you can literally kill the unit that you've stolen using Grand Inquisitor's ability. You can also steal a unit that is tapped and then untap it with Grand Inquisitor and attack with that unit right away. It's just really solid. Another cool thing as well is that I like to do is steal my opponent force units. So steal an opponent Yoda or a 5th brother, and that gives me additional force enabler for my force cards, for my 4th throw, which is pretty cool. Just a very solid card, very flexible, can go in space, can go in on the ground. And I feel like this card is specifically good in a Grand Inquisitor deck. Then we got, of course, the Fallen Lightsaber. We only have 1 copy because I think this card is very situational. There's a lot of situation where opponents can simply kill the unit that has been equipped by Fallen Lightsaber. There's a lot of situation where opponents can bounce or waylay the unit that has been. So it's a bit tricky to use, and that's only the reason why we're only playing 1 copy. But it is very impactful in the right scenarios, as you can imagine. One thing that's also a little bit awkward with Fallen Lightsaber is that if we equip it on most of our unit, then we lose our ability to untap that unit with Grand Inquisitor. But it's still very impactful. The idea is that we attack with the unit first, then we untap it with Grand Inquisitor, and then we play the Fallen Lightsaber. So we can also compensate for the life loss from the Grand Inquisitor by boosting the health with Fallen Lightsaber. And then we can attack, get the trigger, kill a bunch of stuff. Very impactful. And if one does not expect it, it can really take your opponent by surprise and be very powerful. So that's it for the card by card analysis. So we're going to go back to the deck list here. So as you can see, it takes the best out of the green-black, out of the red-black synergies that we can find in a traditional Grand Inquisitor blue, but then combines it with all the super impactful green-black, and also try to find synergies between the two. The synergy with Super Laser Technician, with Consultum Star Viper, the synergies with Traitorous, with Rook, all this just make the deck even better. So now let's talk about the different matchups that you can face. So first we're going to talk about the aggro matchup. So as I said earlier, I think the aggro matchup is not great, but it's still better than because we don't have a lot of sentinels, we don't have a lot of life gain, but it's still a better than Vader because our leaders comes one turn earlier, which is a big deal, and also very important. All deck has the ability to kill much faster than a traditional Vader deck. For example, I think that Fifth Brother is incredibly strong against aggro because typically the aggro player is not going to dedicate resources to kill it, and unless it's able to ambush it early or whatever. But then if once again, if the aggro player is by nature a deck that is non-interactive, it's a deck that most of the time is going to ignore what you do in order to focus on is going to ignore what you do in order to focus on attacking the base. And this is really the kind of situation where Grand Inquisitor can really shine because he can play the Fifth Brother and then untap it, then attack, kill a unit, deal a bunch of damage to the base, and then you can even equip like a Fallen Lightsaber and you can get like out of control like this on the turn after if it's still not been dealt with. So here's my aggro sideboard. So here, I'm sorry, I made a big mistake on this sideboard. This should not be 7 Sister here, it should be a resupply. So we're taking out 3 resupply. Obviously, ramp is very risky against aggro, so taking out the 3 resupplies is the thing to do, not taking out the 7 Sisters. So I really apologize for this mistake. So here, this is 3 resupply, not 3 7 Sisters. And as you can, so we're taking out a card that are expensive cards that don't have a huge impact on the game. Ruthless Raider, Rook, Emperor Palpatine, a bit too expensive even though his ability is very strong against aggro. Can one-shot, notably the I forgot the name, the Agaria attack pod. But still, we don't want to have too many of them because they're just very expensive. Obviously, we had some more Sentinel units, some Constant Star Viper to gain some health and get some air superiority. More removal that are very good against aggro, Force Choke, Open Fire, and also Fallen Lightsaber because once again, once a Fallen Lightsaber is on the unit, we can start putting loads of pressure on the opponent base while dealing damage to the board at the same time, which is very good. So yeah, just reply those resupply, and this is basically the sideboard plan against aggro. This is our sideboard plan against Boba. We're going to take out the Star Viper, which is not amazing. Open Fire is not amazing against Boba because most of the units are either shielded or they have more than 4 health, so Open Fire doesn't really kill much of anything. Same for Rook. Rook doesn't really kill much of anything. There's not just a lot of large units that you are willing to kill, and this dependence on ECL is a bit of a problem. I guess it's like most of the units that have a lot of health in the Boba matchups are going to be units that have ambush, so they're going to be damaged. So the Death Touch ability of Rook is just not super useful in this matchup. And we add in Force Choke, which is amazing against a Boba unit, and also really helpful against Boba Leader to kill Boba Leader fast as well. Help us to stabilize the game a little bit faster, even though it makes your opponent draws a card. The most important part is to stabilize the game to fight the Boba big turn, so then we can take over the late game, because we definitely have a stronger late game than Boba. And then of course we play the Reinforcement Walker that allows us to put some pressure, put a large unit that's going to be very difficult to deal with, and heal our base at the same time. Against Control, we are taking out the Force Choke, which once again makes us opponents draw some cards, which is not great against Control. Doesn't kill much of anything really. That it's almost often just a bit overkill. Like, it's very good against Gideon, as I guess, but outside of Gideon, really doesn't. There's not really a whole lot that dies to Force Choke. There's no thing that Force Choke just kill particularly well, and making opponent draws a card is kind of a problem. If we want to kill Gideon, by the way, Rook is very good. Because we can just play Rook, untap it with the Grand Inquisitor, and then attack Rook on the Gideon, kill it. And we don't even lose our Rook, which is great. We're taking out the Cell Block guy, we don't need as many Sentinels. We just keep one as a toolbox for Vader. Star Vipers, again, not ideal against Control. And of course, we're adding a lot more top end with all those reinforcement walker that are coming in to reinforce our late game to fight against control. So we have a very beefy control with walkers, Palpatines, and Vaders. And that's it for the deck. So this is for the deck tech. Um, against control, like really a lot of very just powerful impact and the ability to take over the game early on. If your opponent just happens to be tap out and we have a fifth brother in play, we can deal tons of damage to control. And one very strong thing that is going on with Grand Inquisitor when we play against control is that if you've managed to deal a significant amount of damage to the enemy base, then it becomes a real headache for the control deck because of Grand Inquisitor's ability, every unit that you play, I mean, not every unit, but all the units that have 3 attack or less, which there's plenty of in this deck, then those units can come into play ready and can deal the last bit of damage. So we basically have like a million finishers in the deck once that happens. So this is something that is a big headache for the control deck to fight against. So this is basically the core of the deck. So now that we've done all this, we can go a little bit into the mulligans. So let's see what we can do. Okay, so this first hand here doesn't have any turn 1 play. I think it's an acceptable hand to keep if you're playing against control because it has a resupply, so we can ramp into things. We can probably resource the Fallen Lightsabers, and maybe the Cell Block Guard, and hope that we're going to draw some more late game. We have the Useless Raider, which is very good against control. But against Boba and Aggro, I would probably mulligan this hand because we need a turn 1 play. Okay, another hand, and once again, no turn 1 play. But this hand is a lot more keepable because we got an open fire. So very often what can happen, your opponent plays first, he plays a unit. Sometimes it's very worth it to, instead of even playing a turn 1 play, just simply take the initiative so you can open fire and kill that unit before it gets to attack. And also it allows you to deal against potential the opponent might go wing leader on that unit, boosting that unit, and once again when that unit has a wing leader as 2 experience token, it becomes impossible to kill. So you want to play that open fire to get rid of that unit before it gets to get boosted. So it is often an acceptable play to skip your turn, so then you can guarantee the removal spell with the initiative the turn after. So this is actually not a bad hand against aggro for that very reason. And obviously the rest of the hand needs work, but it's a hand I would probably keep if I had to. If I mulligan into this hand, I would be okay keeping that hand. Okay, new mulligan. Once again, no turn 1 play. We're pretty unlucky on this one. We play 9 turn 1 play, which is not the most, but we don't depend on turn 1 play as much because here, for example, we can have a force choke. If someone plays a turn 1, we can just force choke it. If he's playing something in space, it's a bit more of a problematic. And we're gonna need to draw into some sort of answers. We have plenty of answers. We play 3 interceptors, consult some Star Vipers, and of course the open fires that can deal with space. Okay, once again, no turn 1 play. Today the DB is giving me a hard time today. Okay, so this hand, once again, against aggro, we can just take the initiative, go Cell Block Guard, so it's not too bad. Against control, it's perfectly acceptable. We got a Super Laser Technician to ramp into, and then we can jump directly into the Traitorous, and then we have some powerful late game cards afterwards. Okay, so this hand, at least we got a turn 1 play. Seasoned Short Trooper turn 1, the double 4th throw is a bit awkward, so I would probably resource one of them and resource one of the Vaders, keep like one of each. Another thing you can do is resource both Vaders and hope that you're going to be drawing some sort of a force unit, and multiple 4th throws can actually be very powerful because the 4th throw might discard something relatively weak, but the second 4th throw probably most likely will discard something huge. So I actually do love the double 4th throw, but it's a bit, yeah, I would probably resource the 2 Vaders here. We're not getting to the Vader anytime soon, and any force unit that we draw becomes so threatening because of the double 4th throw. So I actually like resourcing the 2, so going turn 1 Short Trooper, turn 2 Cell Block Guard, hope that we find a 4th unit. Our leader, of course, is a force unit, so worst case scenario, we get into the Grand Inquisitor turn, we summon him, and then 4th throw, and that is just so powerful. Okay, new hands, pretty good. We get the turn 1 Wolf or Seasoned Short Trooper, depending on the matchup. and then turn 2 resupply, and then we can go Barrage on the Short Trooper. Even Barrage on Wolf is not bad. And yeah, probably resourcing the Fallen Lightsaber and the Interceptor. If I'm playing against Aggro, I'll probably resource the resupply and keep the Interceptor to fight against control, to fight against space. And that's basically it for the deck tech. So as I said, is it the most competitive deck in the game right now? Not necessarily. I still have a preference for the regular Vader ramp deck, but I think this deck is very close in power level to the Vader deck. And it has a couple of qualities. If you like the Vader playstyle, but wants to have a deck that is a bit better against aggro, I strongly advise you to try this one, because his ability to race aggro with this insane Grand Inquisitor turn is very, very powerful. Grand Inquisitor is quite of a difficult leader to play, but if you know how to play him properly, it can be extremely, extremely impactful. So, in my opinion, it's the best Grand Inquisitor deck, and something that is very much worth a try. So, thank you for following that video, and if you liked the video, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. And thank you very much, and see you next time.